Here we go. Hello, my name is Peter, and welcome into the Fanaron. Tonight was supposed to be a night where me and my buddy Zach were supposed to continue the story that we've been working on about tripping out and traveling to the multiverse and interacting with different versions of ourselves. But something came up. He was busy, so I am on here by myself tonight, and I'm going to be starting a new story. So, that being said, where's my glasses? I need my glasses. I have an idea. In some cricket populations, whether it's a farm or they're out in the wilds, when the crickets become too populated, overpopulated, they become cannibalistic. What if that happened to humanity? We just reached 8 billion people, my friends. And I don't know, I'm not the only one. I know I'm not the only one who's noticing the craziness in the world. So, what if humanity has a threshold, and when we reach that threshold, humans start eating each other in the same way that you would expect a zombie apocalypse? That could be the real way that the zombie apocalypse starts. Some people might think that it could be a virus or some type of spiritual, supernatural thing. I think that potentially humans forget. We forget that we are animals. And just like animals, we fall under the spell of biology. And if it happens in crickets, it very well could happen to humans. So once again, welcome into the Fanaron. I am listening to the Dune soundtrack tonight. It's going to get me in the mood. And unfortunately, I can't stream the Dune soundtrack because copyright infringement. But if you want to listen along to the Dune soundtrack, that is the mode. That's the mode that I'm in. That's the mood, the mindset that I'm thinking of when I think of something like a zombie apocalypse. By the way, the new Dune, the Dune that came out most recently, not the old one, that although the soundtrack's very good and the movie's very good, it's the new Dune is, in my opinion, one of the best recreations of a novel, the best adaptations of a novel as well. So, it sucks that I can't have Zach here, but let's start with this idea. It's just an idea, and the whole point of this podcast is to show that you can turn an idea into a story if you understand story structure. Now, I obviously need some characters. It'll probably be some type of an ensemble. So let me go to my writer duet. Here we go. I've got a blank project here. By the way, these streams and podcasts are currently not sponsored by anybody, but if I could choose one software to sponsor me, man, Writer Duet has been a lifesaver because before I start, I'll tell a quick story. About 6 years ago, me and Zach were writing a screenplay, and we stayed up all night long writing, like for 8 hours straight in the middle of the night. And we got like 40 pages done, and we were writing it on Celtics. But I guess I forgot to save before we went to bed, because we went to bed at like 4 a.m, woke up like a few hours later, and it was all gone. Just an entire night's worth of work, 40 pages worth of work, completely gone. We haven't started that episode or that screenplay up over again. We were, I guess, just so pissed off about it. But Writer Duet is like Google Docs. It's every time you type something, it's auto-saving, and you could have more than one person writing on the same script at the same time. So you could have people from the other side of the country or the world adding to your screenplay, and if you are in real time. You can look and see the screenplay actually changing, and that's the software that we like to use. It's not free, but it's I know it's not the industry standard, but you know what? I am not working in Hollywood right now, and if I were working in Hollywood, I'd probably switch over to Final Draft. But for right now, especially for collaboration, Writer Duet, in my opinion, is one of the best. And it also it just gets you to kind of understand screenplay format, which is different than most other formats. I think that's one of the biggest barriers to entry is when a manager or a somebody working at a studio sees a screenplay that's not in the proper format. They just kind of throw it to the side or throw it in the trash. So learning format's pretty important. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to go into Writer Duet now, and I'm thinking about a scene. Obviously, if you could see my background, you will see that I'm in a mall. That's where most zombie apocalypses take place. I guess that's where my brain goes initially. So I'm going to start out with interior mall. And I'm thinking I want to do this maybe in the evening or sunset. Most zombie movies take place during the day or at night, I guess. And this, okay, first of all, I'm also thinking of like between 5 and 8 minutes, maybe, like really short. So I'm not gonna go through the entire story structure of like something like a 3-act structure or Dan Harmon's story circle, but I do still want to incorporate some of those aspects in there. So it can't just be a scene. It has to have some type of a conflict, and we have to have a main character and an antagonist. So here we go. I've got some ideas written down on my phone that I want to go over. So I'm considering maybe for resources' sake, maybe 3 to 4 people, maybe 5 people max. And I'm thinking that maybe the overarching story should be these people are trying to figure out what's happening. Like we jump into the story right in the middle of the action. Like maybe they're running into the mall. Okay, I like that idea. So before I actually start doing this, I'm going to do exterior mall sunset. But I'm also just going to make some bullet points real fast. Okay. We're going to say that, let me go into my full screen mode. We're going to say they are running frantically to get inside. Okay, these are just bullet points, by the way. This is kind of how I like to start it out. I kind of plan out the plot just very loosely, and then I try to, because a lot of my screenplays start out with just a random idea, and then I kind of form a character around that. Sometimes they start with a character, but everybody kind of writes slightly differently, and I tend to write more in the sense of you start out with a idea and kind of form a plot around that idea and then form a character around the plot. There's no wrong way to do it. Everybody writes differently. So let's start with them running frantically to get inside. Zombies are chasing them. We're going to say like that they get inside. Ooh. If anybody watching has ever heard of Save the Cat, I'm going to do a variation of that here. And I just thought of this idea because Save the Cat is the idea that the first thing that you want to show your protagonist doing is saving a cat or doing something good or nice. And that kind of solidifies them as a good guy so that no matter what they do after that, you have it kind of engraved in your head that this is the protagonist. They did something good, and even if they do something bad afterwards, it's almost like subconsciously we forgive that. A variation of that is the Darth Vader model, where the first thing in A New Hope, the original Star Wars, the first thing you see is the first time you see Darth Vader, he walks in and he kills somebody immediately. So now, like, he doesn't really kill anybody else the rest of the movie. He's just kind of dark and brooding and mysterious, but we initially see him kill somebody with his bare hands, and he's completely unforgiving. So we are just put into the mindset that, okay, this person is a bad guy. And so I'm going to do something similar with the zombies today. Let me see. Where'd my writer do it go? Here it is. I got too many windows open. Let me just subtract this one. All right. Writer duet. Let's go back in. So I'm going to start out with maybe before they get inside, they look back briefly at the zombies chasing them and watch as one of their comrades, don't know if that's how you spell comrades, but there's no underline, so watch as one of their comrades gets eaten. So now the first thing that we see is the zombies actually getting one of them. That sets them up for some type of an emotional distress, so they're going to be completely distressed. The first thing that they do when we see them interact is they're going to kind of grieve in a way. Maybe I can make one of them like that person's spouse or significant other. Okay. And now also it shows kind of how threatening the zombie threat is. Also, I'm imagining that the zombies are like in Dawn of the Dead, where they're kind of sprinting and not necessarily like your traditional slow walking zombie. I have this theory that if there was a zombie apocalypse and people started turning into these undead creatures, that the first few days would probably be sprinting zombies, and then after a while they'd start slowing down as rigor mortis kicks in and their muscles and everything tighten up, and then they turn into these like limping zombies. But initially they'll have all of the strength and stamina of a fully grown human being, but they won't ever get tired because their mind is taken over. So they literally could sprint nonstop and never get tired until literally their legs break off. Or I imagine them eating somebody's guts, just constantly eating, and their stomach is just getting bigger and bloated, and then one of their stomachs just like explodes and the guts spill out of their own stomach, but then they just keep eating and they just never stop. Yeah, my mind goes to dark places sometimes, but I just think that would be a really cool scene. That's another thing. Sometimes the ideas come as a scene to me, and then I kind of form that story or that idea around a scene. That's called anxiety, when you think of something that could happen to you, and then you imagine, instead of getting all scared and imagining that's going to happen to you, you form a story around it. It's probably one of my best skills that I'm trying to hone and learn, because everybody has anxiety, but instead of letting the anxiety control you, you control the anxiety by taking those negative thoughts and then spinning it into a story. All right. So they look back briefly at the zombies chasing them and watch as one of their comrades gets eaten. Okay, and then they get inside. They catch their breath and try to get their composure. Okay, I'm gonna have, maybe it's a man who gets eaten and his wife is inside. Okay, so a woman is screaming and wailing. screaming. Oh, it looks like my autocorrect is not working on this page. That's okay. A woman screaming and wailing. She's being comforted. And then let's say we have, so she's one of our characters, but maybe she's a background character, and she's being comforted by our protagonist. And you know what? I'm thinking that maybe he's mid 50s. Biologist. Let's see. And then, okay, so this is our protagonist. Let's see. And our antagonist, I'm just going to make him like a young guy. Should I make him a guy or a girl? Should I make it a guy or a girl? Well, I'm a guy, so I relate better to guys. I think I could write a guy better than writing a girl. Although I have been trying to kind of explore and write from the perspective of like people who are different than me. It's really hard like when you're crossing cultural gaps or gender gaps and you're trying to represent the people who are not you, like in an accurate manner. It's definitely a skill, and when you write like something like that, it requires a little bit more research. I feel like anybody in this situation would probably be equally scared and aggressive if they are like doubting the words of the potential like leader or the person taking charge, whether it's a guy or a girl. So I think I'm gonna make it a girl. So she's a protagonist. Oh no, she's an antagonist. She's an ant because she's a girl. Okay, so she's maybe 26. What I find when I'm writing descriptions of people, like I sometimes imagine somebody very specific in my head, but I think that when somebody else reads that description, they might not feel the same way about that person as I do. So I try to be detailed but vague, more detailed about their background and personality than the way they look. And here's a perfect example. If I were to say the most beautiful woman in the world and then describe my wife. Now, when I say the most beautiful woman in the world, people might initially say, "Oh, okay, like I have an image in my head." And then I describe my wife, and that's completely not the image they had in their head because they have a different desires than I do. And so now they're disconnected from this person, this woman who's in my mind is the most beautiful woman in the world. But to them, they're like, oh, well, that's not what I'm into. So I don't think that person is as beautiful as you do. And so if you're just vague and say the most beautiful woman in the world, then whatever they initially imagine is what they're going to see. And then they're going to have that connection. And that's kind of what novels do. Screenplays are different. But at this point, in the screenplay, like I haven't cast anybody, so I'm imagining somebody specific, but I'm not gonna put those details in here. I'm gonna let, like, if this ever gets made, if I decide to direct this and make this, I'll then go back and rewrite this as a shooting script with some camera angles and movements and more details about the characters and what I think that they should look like. But as of right now, it's just a spec script, and it should have this balance of detail but also vagueness, because the first draft of any script, you can assume that you're not gonna be filming it. I mean, unless you've already been given a bunch of money and they're like, hey, go write a script and then immediately shoot it. That never happens. Okay. Let's see here. Hey now. Hey now. What's going on? Sorry. Technical difficulties. Oh, that's why. Because I switched to a different camera. That's the cool thing about having a switcher. I could switch to different cameras like this. Huh? Close up. Wide shot. Close up. Wide shot. Close up. Wide shot. All right. Let's go back. Sorry. Okay. So, our protagonist. It's a girl. Girl. 26. And she is pissed. Okay. Let's just call her girl for now. Man, me and Zach we have this problem, man, where we just come up with the most vague names. But it ends up being cool because one of our stories is called Alt, and we were calling the dude Man. We were calling him Man the whole time because we were like, yeah, he's a man, so we'll call him Man. And then we came up, because it's a sci-fi film that takes place on Mars, we came up with the idea of calling him Manhattan, which I've never met a person named Manhattan, but I've met like people named Brooklyn or, other cities. So it actually ended up turning into a pretty cool idea. But girl, she says something like, what the hell was that? And she's directing. Okay, so let's name our protagonist Brett. You know why? Because when I think of a middle-aged or mid-50s biologist, I think of Brett Weinstein. And so that's sorry to ruin that for everybody. Now he's going to be the person you're thinking of. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The dialogue will probably be refined as we do a couple more passes over this. To the woman. That's directed to the woman who is crying. What the hell was that? And then one of our other guys. Shut up. Just shut up. Maybe she's kind of the only one who blames our main character. I'm imagining the main character is going to maybe be the one who's been calling the shots a little bit. And so she is mad because it was his idea to move. Oh, just shut up. Oh my gosh. S-H. That's weird. And then Brett. Is Brett with 2 T's or Brett with 1 T? Simply glares up at her as he continues to comfort the woman. Let's say that the woman, she's going to be yelling her husband's name What could her husband's name be? It could be. It's hard coming up with names because sometimes you just want to come up with a random name. And sometimes you want to come up with a name that actually means something. But for somebody who just died, maybe a sacrifice, he was a sacrifice, so who else gets sacrificed in movies? I don't know. Let's just call him... Why is this taking so long? Drew? Drew. Ugh, someone, I don't know, Drew. Andrew. No. Sorry, I'm so sorry. What the hell was that? Just shut up. Brett glares up at her as he continues to comfort the woman. Well, we didn't. I fucking told you we should have stayed. Well, we didn't. Now, can you give this woman some peace? I'm sick of taking orders from you, old man. Let's see. Brett motions at, let's call him other for now. Yeah, because coming up with names is hard. Brett motions at other. And then other. Takes his place. Comforting woman. All right, let me just come up with some names real fast so I'm not going through and doing woman. Sarah. Sarah and Andrew. So let's call her Sarah. And then we're going to go Brett is the main guy. And it's 1 T or 2 T's? I should probably just look it up. I think it's only 1 T. Other is going to be... Matthew. And then girl is going to be Taylor. Taylor. Brett motions at Matthew. Who takes his place comforting Sarah. Alrighty. Now it's kind of starting to form into like screenplay format, that just because that's how my brain works. Let's say... Okay. He walks. He walks. This is where a nice thesaurus comes in handy, because sometimes it's hard to come up with those kind of analogy words or synonyms for really stupid simple words like walks or talks or something like that. So it's once again, this is just a first draft. This is just my first run through, actually. So he approaches. There you go. He approaches Sarah, stone-faced. He gets right in her face. Okay, so maybe this is not necessary. Can you give this woman some peace? That doesn't sound realistic. So I'm going to combine this. Hello? Oh, I guess I can't copy and paste while this is open. That's kind of weird. Okay, that's all right. I'm sick of taking orders from you, old man. Brett does not need to say anything. He motion, because I want him to be like stoic. And that's another thing, is that sometimes it's better when there's less dialogue. I really sometimes try to actually write screenplays with no dialogue, because dialogue is hard to write. I'm an idea guy. I tend to write better dialogue when Zach's with me. But because like we work well together as a team, he kind of bounces ideas off of me when it comes to the big picture thing, and then he's pretty good at writing dialogue. So let's see. So Brett motions at Matthew to take his place, comforting Sarah. He approaches Sarah, stone-faced. He gets right in her face. Pauses. Then walks past her. She glances around at the other survivors, then reluctantly follows Brett. Maybe reluctantly is kind of a word that maybe I cannot use, because that is like a feeling. We can't show feeling in screenplay format, because how are you supposed to show reluctant? Then follows Brett. So that's one thing that I always try to keep in mind. Initially, I tend to write a little bit of prose or a little bit of like feeling in there, but then, you know, once again, how are you supposed to show somebody being reluctant? I guess you could show it, but it's better to describe something like how their face looks or something like that, or an action that they make. Okay. Then follows Brett. And then we cut to... Oops. Cut to... interior. Let's call this a storefront. Continued. Not continuous. Continued. Okay, so I'm actually going to go back up here, and when they get inside, just as the others reach the entrance to the mall. And then we're going to go, interior. Oops. We're going scene, interior, Mall lobby. Continued. No, not continuous. Continued. Come on. Oh my. No! Oy, oy, oy. So when I'm interacting with this during a live stream, it's kind of glitching out a little bit, but that's all right. Scene, interior, mall lobby. Continued. There we go. They catch the breath as they try to catch as they attempt to regain their composure. Sarah's screaming and wailing. She's being comforted by by Brett. A mid-50s man with salt and pepper hair. Let's make this all caps. Andrew. No. Man, that would suck. Like right before you get inside too. That's our kill the cat moment. Exterior mall parking lot. Sunset. So there's 4 of them left. Sarah, Brett, Taylor, Matthew. Yeah. 5 people are 5 run frantically to get inside. To get to the mall entrance. Zombies are chasing them. Zombies are right on their tail. Andrew stumbles over a parking. What are those things called? There's like, it's like the thing that stops the car from going up onto the sidewalk. Parking thingy. Cement block, I'm just going to say. Over a cement block. Suddenly, a zombie grabs onto his shoulder and pulls him to the ground. Andrew's shoulder. So I'm kind of doubling back because I went back to correct some things and now like another image came into my head. So I'm just like writing it down. So Andrew's shoulder is crushed under the immense. That's not how you spell immense. Immense. Nope. Let's go look something up real fast. This is what Google's for. immense. Oh, it's an I. Immense. Okay, immense. Thank you. Immense. Immense? Immense. You know when you say a word over and over and over again, and then it's like, oh, that doesn't sound right. It sounds weird. Immense. From the immense pressure or strength. Strength. Because like I was saying before, like I'm imagining, like, if I didn't have my brain telling me that my hand was tired or cramping or I couldn't squeeze that hard, or hey, squeezing this that hard is hurting me, like, human beings are strong. We have like the ability to crush things. If like something were controlling us, bones are strong, our muscles are strong, and so the zombie is now using the full strength, the full ability of the human body without the mind interfering or pumping the brakes. Andrew's shoulder is crushed under the immense strength of the zombies. Grip. Love it. So we'll say the others look back. The others look back briefly as they hear, ooh yeah, as they hear the blood curdling screams of Andrew being eaten alive. Okay, now immediately, Sarah. No! Let's go to my full screen. Sarah stops short. Short. No, wait. Sarah lunges toward her husband as all the zombies, I'm just going to capitalize zombies, even though, is it a proper noun? If they're, well, they're the overarching antagonist, but the antagonist is going to be Taylor. Oh yeah, that's right. So Sarah lunges toward her husband as all the zombies congregate around his body. We hear, that's a good way to describe, like if you're wanting to describe a sound that is very specific, you can write we hear. And if you want to describe like a scene that's very specific, you can write we see. Like we see his arm being ripped off. Dark. We hear gargling as Andrew chokes on his own blood, being eaten alive. Disclaimer: this is graphic content and it's suited for adults and it's for entertainment purposes only. Okay, yes. Congregate over the body. They disregard the rest of them as they eat Andrew alive. We hear the gargling of. We hear gargling as Andrew chokes on his own blood. We don't have to put being eaten alive. Before that, we're gonna Brett. Did we see Brett yet? Brett. Do we have a description of him on here? We have this mid-50s biologist. Because I think that the only two people who I really need, I guess, okay, Andrew and Sarah are in their mid-30s. Maybe Matthew is 19, Sarah is 26, and then Brett is in his 55. And so obviously they tend to, and Brett is a biologist, and maybe he also has kind of he's confident and he has some maybe survival skills, and he's able to articulate certain strategies, and it sounds good to all of them. And then maybe Sarah is just very cocky in her abilities as well, or maybe she is even she's just resistant to authority or something like that. But then she's she goes along for the ride until now, at least. Sometimes it's really hard to find that different voice, especially all coming from one mind. Each character should kind of act and sound differently. And so the way that I try to get around that is I try to attach somebody who I know or know of to a character when I'm writing the character. So I'm imagining someone like Brett Weinstein, who's a very intelligent biologist, as kind of my main character. Taylor, we all know one Taylor who complains a lot, but I don't know. I think that I'm imagining maybe somebody I went to high school with or college with, or somebody who I used to work with. But the rest of the characters are not as important as our two main characters. So I'm just going to focus on them for the most part. So let's go back up here. Sarah lunges towards her husband, and as all the zombies congregate around his body, they disregard the rest of them as they eat him alive. Brett holds Sarah back as she tries with all her strength to get to her dying husband. Let's have her scream his name here. Andrew. Brett drags her into the doors, into the mall, and slams the doors behind him. Okay. Slams the door shut behind him. Obviously it's shut. That just adds another line. I don't need another line. Okay. Interior mall lobby continued. They catch their breath and attempt to regain their composure. Sarah's screaming and wailing. She's being comforted by Brett, a mid-50s man with salt and pepper hair. Okay, so that's kind of, I'm going to keep these, even though typically the first time we see a person, we put their name in all capitals. And then after that, you just make it regular. But this is kind of our description of our characters. So I'm going to keep their names capital here as well. Or either that, or I'm going to move these descriptions up. 5 people frantically get into the mall entrance, blah, 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 blah. Okay, no, I'm just going to keep it like that for now. Okay, so she doesn't need to say anything else here because she already said what she needed to say up here. That's really kind of all her character is this grieving woman now. And also, like, that helps also show Brett's empathy and care for others, and Taylor's complete disregard. Even though it seems like Taylor cares so much about the loss of Andrew, she's actually using that to manipulate the rest of them in order for her to be the leader, and not for them not to listen to Brett anymore. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. Okay, I don't need this. Oh wow! Look at us, guys. We are almost done with the first page. And as like I was gonna write it all and then go back and kind of redo it, but now I'm kind of like liking the way this is coming out. Sarah's screaming and wailing. She's being comforted by Brett, mid-50s man. Okay, let's just make that one. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. What the hell was that? Says Taylor. Oh, just shut up. Brett simply glares up at Taylor as he continues to comfort the woman, Sarah. Sarah. I fucking told you we should have stayed. I'm sick of taking orders from you, old man. Brett motions at Matthew, who takes his place comforting Sarah. He approaches Sarah, stone-faced. He gets right in her face, pauses, then walks past her. She glances around at the other survivors. The only other people there are Matthew and Sarah, but they're not really paying attention to her. Okay, so now we're inside. Now we have kind of some dialogue here. Cool. Should I have them separate? Maybe that's unnecessary. Maybe I just keep them all together. So he just ignores her. She glances at Matthew. Okay. Yeah, no, that's unnecessary too. Okay, so we're just gonna go right into the action of the dialogue. Brett says, "We can't stay here. We can't stay here long. We need to find a safer place. And we don't need that. We can't stay here long." He doesn't have a lot of things to say. He's kind of brooding, maybe a little bit. Man, there's a lot of quiet thought that happens when you're writing a screenplay. I'm trying to work out some of this dialogue. Now that I'm here and I made it to this point, let me actually make some bullet points. Let me say they fight, or they have a discussion. Oops. Then they lock. Okay, this is the point where I have to now start thinking about my main character's story arc. So we could just make it a scene from a larger idea where they argue, then they escape, something bad happens to the antagonist. That's what I'm imagining, is maybe she's going to get eaten because she's not being very nice to everybody. And Brett is truly empathetic and wants to help people. But I really want him to have a choice, because that's really what makes a protagonist interesting. So he needs to have a choice that he has to make, and that choice is going to initiate a journey where there will be a conflict, and then that conflict, he will overcome that conflict, and maybe he'll change or learn something in the process. So what is his flaw then? And okay, not every screenplay has to follow a format like that. So knowing that, if you are into writing at all, and that's why you're here, then you've probably heard the idea that rules are meant to be broken and formats are meant to be broken. I feel it out every single time. I'm trying to work through this and see if I can form some type of like a format around it, knowing what compelling characters are. But sometimes it's okay to make a short film that's just a little scene out of a movie. I really want to make this a little bit more than that, though. So Brett, let's say his conflict will be he wants to save everyone, or he blames himself when they lose someone from the group. So he cries. That shows vulnerability. Like when he's alone, we'll have a quick scene of him alone and he's like weeps. But when he's in front of people, he shows that strength. Maybe Matthew finds him. Okay. Yeah, Matthew finds him. So Matthew is kind of the voice of reason here. He helps Brett to not feel guilty. Whereas Taylor maybe represents regret, or Taylor represents kind of like the devil, right? Who, no matter how good you are, the devil's always going to try to convince you you're not. She is like the person who Taylor tries to make let's go y'all. Sorry, folks. Technical difficulties. Taylor tries to make Brett feel bad at everything he does. But then Brett doesn't show his true emotions. Because he is trying to be a strong leader. Okay, so then he wants to save everyone. He blames himself when they lose someone from the group. And so what does he have to get over? His lesson. I'm going to make this all capital. Conflict. His lesson is he can't save everyone. Super simple, super basic. Maybe he comes to the conclusion because like a series of events. So like maybe they started out with like 8 people or 10 people, and slowly, one by one, they start getting picked off. He kind of rises up and becomes this leader. I don't know. Maybe I'm thinking too deep into this. He can't save everyone. So this, because it's a short film, it doesn't need to be as deep of a lesson as like something that's a feature, because a feature you're going to be able to get much deeper into like the backstory of the person. You're going to be able to get much deeper into kind of their internal conflict, because there's a difference between the external conflict and the internal conflict. The internal conflict is what's the real bread and butter of a film, not the external conflict. And my perfect analogy and example for that is like Jurassic Park, where obviously the external conflict is dinosaurs, but the internal conflict of the main character, who's Dr. Grant, is his kind of transition from hating kids and being this unempathetic person to being more empathetic and actually like comforting and saving the kids. So maybe Brett is going to be a little bit of the opposite. In the beginning, he feels responsible. Maybe not responsible as in like, hey, I'm responsible for this because I'm a biologist or because I was the one working in the lab or something like that. But more so, oh, look at that. I have had this tuft of hair sticking straight up. That's beautiful. But more so responsible for people because he knows more, because he's wise, you know? He has a little bit of like knowledge that the others don't have. So his lesson is he can't save everyone. He needs to become less empathetic, especially to the people who are holding him back, because maybe Taylor was the real reason people keep getting picked off. So he has to drop the dead weight holding them all back. So in this situation, maybe he feels like a father, like he feels like he has to save everyone, even the people who are resisting. But his real lesson will be when he has to make a choice. Should I go back for her or not? Okay, cool. And maybe he considers it because there's an opportunity to. And she looks him right in the eyes, and then he looks her right in the eyes, and then he just kind of settles in his seat as she then looks at him, and then the zombies like swarm her. Okay, whoa, cool. All right. We can't stay here long. So they're going to have a discussion. So, and he's going to cry, and Matt's going to be the person who like tries to talk him into not being so guilty, like, And so the choice there's not like an ordinary world or like anything like that because it's a short film. So we're jumping right into the action. We're skipping that first part or the first act of a film, and we're kind of trying to summarize their journey up into this point with like within the first 2 pages, which is very hard. Which is why a lot of short films just end up turning into just like scenes without kind of like this arc. It's hard. It's hard. This might not be the best short film, but I'm trying, you know? All right. Okay, so I have an idea. My idea is that maybe they escape on the roof. They find a way to call like a helicopter or something. I have the word hot air balloon written down. So I'm guessing that means my mind, when I came up with this idea, because like I've said before, most of my ideas are literally like me thinking of something and then writing it down in my notes and then like just what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of trying to flesh it out later on. That's not the word I was looking for, but that's okay. I don't want to spend too much time thinking about words. Okay. So maybe they go on the roof and there's a hot air balloon up there? Or maybe not, there's a hot air balloon there already, but maybe they see a hot air balloon from inside the mall and then they go to the roof and then they're rescued by a hot air balloon. Okay, let's think about that. Okay, this isn't working again. Oh, that's why. I know exactly why. All right, let's go back to the grind. How can you be so cold? How can you be so cold? You're the reason. And then maybe he loses his cool. Stop. Taylor freezes. Brett takes a deep breath. Matthew, why is this happening? Okay, I can assume that they've been together maybe for a little while. All right, so maybe I'm sick of taking orders from you, old man, is implying that they've been together for a long while, and I kind of want them to have a discussion about what's happening, like what the zombies are. But I know that's a little expositionary, but sometimes you need that in a short film. Obviously, okay, okay, never mind. I like that. I'm sick of taking orders from you. Why is this happening? Under his breath. Okay, so Sarah is, I mean, it's not Sarah. Sarah's just weeping. Matthew is comforting her. Taylor is, the reason why she's so pissy is because she's scared. She's really trying to get a grip on what's happening. Okay, so Taylor no. Leans up against. Oh, you know what I forgot to do is have them barricade as they try to catch their breath as they barricade. Uh-oh. How do you spell barricade? Did I spell it right? What? They try to catch the breath, try to catch their breath as they barricade the doors shut with a vending machine. Okay, cool. So now that solves that problem. Brett takes a deep breath. Why is this happening? Okay, we don't need to discuss what she's doing. Why is this happening? I just don't want it to be too exposition-y. I want it to be like, it kind of has to be a little bit. If I'm gonna go into the whole idea of the crickets, it has to be kind of like this monologue that Brett talks about, and then we can get really dark and do kind of like a slow dolly in on him, and then he can have his kind of dark brooding moment, and then right after that we go right back into the action. Okay. They all sit in silence for a moment. Speaking of silence. They all sit in silence for a moment. Then Taylor it's probably some kind of virus. They cook those things up. Yeah. And so she's like, Brett's a biologist, so maybe she just assumes that he's working in like a viral lab. this this podcast is for entertainment purposes only. I just want to reiterate that. Probably some kind of virus. Assholes like this cook them up in labs so they can control us. Okay, so she just turned into a full-on conspiracy theorist. She doesn't trust authority, clearly, so that kind of bleeds into that. Maybe we don't go that far. All the time. Let's do this. So maybe she's smart, but maybe she's not that smart. Brett doesn't react to her comment. He stares into he stares off into the distance, thinking, silently thinking. Silent. Can't show that somebody's thinking unless they go like this. I'm thinking. And then, okay, here we go. Sarah sniffles. Her voice trembles. It's a sign from God. She barely makes it through her sentence. As she digs her, buries her face back into Matthew's shoulder and weeps. That's not how you spell berries? Berries? Berries. Not berries like a not berries like a bear eats. Berries as in like you got buried. All right. Let's see. Oops. Crickets. They all let's just say silence. Sometimes that's just a nice line. Silence. And then it just tells everyone who's reading it that there is going to be silence. It's just a simple line. Then Sarah gains her composure and lifts her head to look at Brett. Taylor and Matthew glare at him with a confused look on their face. Sarah gains her composure and lifts her head to look at Brett. And lifts her head. And looks at Brett. Sarah gains her composure and looks at Brett. And then he continues. Let's see. When crickets reach a certain population threshold, the community or farm become, the community, let's just say they become cannibalistic. Taylor rolls her eyes. All right, and then we want minimal dialogue, so I was going to have Taylor say something stupid, but we'll just continue. When crickets reach a certain population threshold, they become cannibalistic. They destroy each other when they are overpopulated. It's a biological trait in many insects. Sounds pretty by the books. Yes. When crickets reach a certain population, well, he is a biologist, but he's not like in an interview. How about this? Look. When crickets reach a certain population, they have a tendency to become cannibalistic. They have a tendency to become cannibalistic. They tend... how about this? They become cannibalistic. They destroy each other when they're overpopulated. When they are overpopulated, it's a biological reflex. In many insects, no, we're going to take that part out. It's a biological reflex. Maybe, just maybe, humans aren't so different. And Taylor. So are crickets. Matthew, you sly dog, you 19-year-old boy. You're going to say something real mean. Why do you always have to be? No. Maybe not. fuck is wrong with you? Look, I don't care why this is happening. Let's capital this. Nope, I don't care why. I'm more concerned with how. As in, how the fuck are we going to get out of here? Can we destroy them? So Matthew completely disregards. Disregarding Taylor. Can we destroy them? Brett. Yes, but yeah, let's just sit in silence for another second. Okay. I don't really know where to go from here. So, I have been doing this for an hour and a half. Let me think about the rest of the plot, and then I might want to continue this another time. Let's see. Okay, because dialogue takes a lot out of me, so maybe I'll bring somebody else on to help me with some dialogue, but I definitely, I at least want to get this plot kind of like fleshed out a little bit more before I get off. So, maybe after that's okay. Now I've got an idea. So we see this kind of this scene, right? We see this scene where Brett gets very brooding and focused, and it's kind of calm, and it's kind of dark, right? So we kind of have this moment of silence, or like a little bit of a build-up or a swell in the music, and then I'm imagining like that question that Matthew says, can we destroy them? Like nobody really has an answer for that, so they just kind of sit in silence, and then we cut to like a wide shot of all of them sitting and kind of like a dolly out, and then we fade into the next scene. So let's do this. Fade 2. No, not fade out. Fade 2. Come on now. Fade 2. Interior. Storefront. Later. And we'll have Brett looks through debris in. Okay. Brett looks through debris. He flips over a broken table. How about as he flips over a broken table? He sees a dead body, half eaten. He winces and moves the body out of the way. Underneath, he finds a half empty water bottle and a first aid kit. Okay, so this is where he scans the room once more, then turns to leave, and we'll say suddenly he bumps right into Matthew. He jumps, then catches his breath. Matthew is apologetic. Sorry. We shouldn't sneak up on each other like that. Shouldn't sneak up on each other like that. So this is where Matthew is the voice of reason and helps him not to feel guilty. So, and I can't copy and paste in here, unfortunately. Well, that's kind of stupid. Let me open it up in another window real fast, folks. Write a duet. All right, folks. All right. We're going to go copy this conflict and lesson. Put that down there. Just trying to be a strong leader. Now let's go back to this. So let's think of the rest of the beats. Taylor, so in this area, Matt is the voice of reason. He helps Brett not to feel guilty. Brett cries. He realizes that he can't save everybody. It's kind of like a discussion, but maybe he's going to resist, okay? So let's write that. Brett resists the idea that he can't save everyone. He is stubborn. Yeah, okay. So now that is kind of like that low point, right? Where he knows the truth. He knows he can't save everyone, but he resists. So he's like, he knows what he has to do, but he doesn't do it. He has too much of a moral compass. Okay, so maybe we have another short discussion. So this is 4 pages. We're on page 4. So if we want it to be like 6 to 8 minutes, then it's going to be a 6 to 8 pages. So I think we're right on track. We have one more short discussion between Brett and Matthew alone. And then maybe they hear a crash and run back to the girls. And then let's have Sarah. Brett tries to give them orders, but Sarah resists. Then Brett lets Sarah take the lead. Maybe he says something like, fine. Because he feels guilty, he lets her kind of take it so that he kind of like washes his hands from the guilt. But then at the very end, he goes back. Like when Sarah fails, she doesn't die immediately. She fails, and then he goes back to save the other two, and then he has an opportunity to save her, but it might be him sacrificing himself to save her, and he chooses not to. He's willing to sacrifice himself to save the other two, but not for her, because that's that decision where he's like, I can't save everybody, and if I get to choose who I save and who I don't save, then I choose to not save her. So he lets Sarah take the lead. Let's say Sarah makes some dumbass decisions. Now I'm thinking maybe he does save her because he makes the choice. So it's almost like an anti-hero because he doesn't learn anything if that's the case. He'll make the choice to not to save Sarah and to sacrifice himself. I don't know which one I like better. If anyone wants to give their input, you're more than welcome. All right. I'm going to stick with my original idea. Decisions. I'm going to stick with my original idea, and then maybe next time when I kind of dive in a little bit deeper, I can make a decision. I'm imagining that she ends up... Oh, Sarah? Why am I saying Sarah? Taylor makes dumbass decisions. And then I'm imagining... Why do I keep saying Sarah? Taylor. They hear crash in front of the girls. Brett tries to give them orders. Taylor resists. He lets Taylor... My bad. Take the lead. Taylor makes some dumbass decisions. She gets Sarah bitten. But maybe Brett comes to the rescue and pulls Sarah to safety. Her arm is ripped off. Her arm is ripped off. Ooh, okay. Okay, so okay, here we go. Taylor leads them to the roof. Then maybe one of them says like, "Where do we go now? We're stuck up here." Then blah, 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 we go. Oops. How about like, there's only one way up and one way. There's only one way out, and it's through them. Okay, so they. Okay, let's. I know that the hot air balloon is kind of a MacGuffin. It like comes in. It's kind of a Captain Marvel, where like the whole film, you know, they're trying to do something on their own, but then at the very end, Captain Marvel comes and saves the day. It's like the easy way out, right? So maybe Brett has to make a decision that actually gets the hot air balloon to notice them. So Brett takes wooden debris from the roof and builds a fire. B-U-I-L-D-S, a fire. And then Taylor gets pissed at him. And throws a fit. And then she gets Sarah bitten somehow. And I'll put somehow. Brett comes to the rescue, pulls Sarah to safety. Her arm is ripped off. He ties a tourniquet. Tourniquet? Tourniquet? Google, how do you spell tourniquet? Tourniquet. There we go. He ties a tourniquet and tries to keep her warm and calm as she goes into shock. Alrighty. And then throws a fit. Okay, let's see. How about this? Like Brett. Oh, okay. Brett spots a hot air balloon. And he gets an idea. Okay. The balloon arrives just in time The balloon arrives just in time. Let's say Brett they approach it as it is about to land. And then we'll say the zombies break through their barricade. I already had this problem with barricade, huh? Is that it? Is that how I spell barricade? Maybe not. Whatever. Brett is helping Sarah into the basket when the zombies break through their barricade. Let's say Matthew and Taylor hold the door shut as Brett helps Sarah. Then Brett, what does he do? Runs back to help the other two. One, two, three. They all run at the same time towards the balloon as it slowly lifts off. Why do I keep missing an L in balloon? Okay. Alrighty. They all run at the same time towards the balloon as it slowly lifts off. So first, I'm going to have Matthew stumbles. Brett stops and helps him up. Brett stops and helps him up. Oh, yeah. And Taylor just keeps on going. Brett basically drags Matthew the rest of the way, but they end up passing Taylor, who also trips and falls. Oh, yeah, this is the part. Then Brett helps Matthew up into the basket, then glances back at Taylor. And she says, "Help." Brett shakes his head, then turns and climbs into the basket. This is getting dark, guys. Brett shakes his head, then turns and climbs into the basket. He does. Oh, yeah. Okay. Yep. Glances back at Taylor. They lock eyes. This is the emotional part. They lock eyes. And then she says, "Help." Brett shakes his head, turns. So after he turns, he never looks back. He never looks back as they lift off into the air. The others watch as Taylor is eaten alive, but Brett simply stares off into the distance. Safety. All right, so that's really dark. So let's go over this whole thing. We start out with them running into the mall entrance. First thing we do is we have that kill the cat moment where Andrew stumbles and he's immediately taken out by a zombie. So obviously Brett can't run out and save him. So he grabs Sarah, who is like freaking out. He drags her to safety. And then we have this confrontation inside where Taylor is basically telling Brett that he's an idiot and he's the reason why people keep dying. Brett stays stoic. And then he has his kind of monologue where he talks about crickets, which is where the idea came from. So got to include that in there. And you know what? It's funny because sometimes the idea initially, my dog's drinking water. He did this last time. He's ruining my live stream. What the hell? Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. Sometimes I have an idea, an initial idea, and then I write the script out and I flesh it all out, and then the actual idea doesn't end up making it into the final draft because it doesn't serve the characters. Because at the end of the day, it's the characters, not the plot, that's the thing that we connect to. So I think that Brett's character really... You're still drinking? Really? Really, dude? Albus. Come on now. So anyway, when Brett has his monologue about the crickets, I think it makes sense. I think that because he's a biologist, having that monologue with the crickets brings out a lot of his personality and character, and it kind of shows us the motivation of where his mindset is. And I'm actually imagining a scene from World War Z, the scene where the scientist actually talks about like his theory of the origin of the virus that's taken out, that's bringing out all the zombies. And so I think that keeping that in my head is kind of an inspiration, having Brett go through this monologue where he's talking about how crickets, when they become overpopulated, start becoming cannibals and start eating each other, and how human beings, because we're reaching a point where we're like at 8 billion people or more than 8 billion people on Earth, it totally could happen. I mean, in my mind, at least. We're not too different from insects. We're animals after all. So I like keeping that part in, and I think that really adds to the story without having too much exposition. So after we have that monologue, we have that kind of moment of silence, we fade to the storefront later on where we see a little bit more of Brett going into searching for supplies, because he kind of is this like unofficial leader of the group. He feels responsible for the deaths of his colleagues, of the people in this group. And then we got to a point in this writing session where I just kind of bullet pointed these plots for the rest of the film. So we want to show a little bit of vulnerability. So he's very stoic and he's very calm when he's in front of people, but when he's alone, he kind of breaks down and he cries because he feels responsible. And I think, like I wrote down earlier, that the conflict that he's going to go through is that he wants to save everybody. He needs to save everybody, and he blames himself when he loses somebody in the group. So having that be his weakest point, and having that be the conflict that he has to get over, that internal conflict, that he can't save everybody, and if he has to make a choice, he's going to let the person die who's actually holding the group back. So that little silent part with him and Matthew, I think, is going to be a really good, impactful scene from the film. And then we go right back into the action where they hear a crash. They have to run up to the roof. And then I think that on the roof scene, we can go into, we could let it drag out a little longer, but I think that having that quiet part in the middle of the film and then going right back into the action, I think that's where it's at. So when they get up onto the roof, Brett immediately spots the hot air balloon. He gets an idea. He finds wood and starts a fire, and Taylor becomes kind of pissed off at him, like, you're going to burn the place down. Then the balloon arrives. It turns and it arrives just in time. And then Sarah makes a terrible decision, gets Taylor makes a terrible decision, gets Sarah's arm ripped off somehow. And Brett then has to save somebody else. And then at the very end, when Sarah, Matthew, and Brett are holding the door closed, and the zombies make it through, Brett decides to save Matthew and let Taylor go. And then at the very end, when she asks for help, he shakes his head no and turns and just washes his hands from his responsibility of her. I think that's a really good send-off. So next time I get on, I'm going to take all these bullet points that we just fleshed out a little bit, and I'm going to do what we did up here in the first half of the film and really dive into the dialogue and the details of the scene. So I think that's going to be it for me tonight. Thank you for everybody who dropped in, and I hope that we get to see each other again soon. Until next time, I am Peter, and this has been a little glimpse into my fan-around. I appreciate all of you.